Hey, what's up, everyone? Dr. Lee Thomas here. I'm joined by one of my great friends, Leslie Crevar. So excited to have you on Beeline Health Podcast today.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So, we've talked about doing this for, legitimately speaking here, like years and years and years, getting together, partnering in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to have you starting to work with us and our patients in the office, which we'll obviously get into and talk about today. But the whole, to give everyone listening just like an idea of why we're doing this, it's really to work on helping our collective and individual mindsets. Mm-hmm. And I know this is where your background is, so I know you can speak a lot to it. But really, one of the things that I've wanted to work with you with for such a long time is that, you know, we have patients that come into our office that want to get healthy, that have every desire to be the best for themselves, for their families, mm-hmm. for their purpose in life, and oftentimes what's in between our own 2 ears is what gets in our way. So the whole point of today is to really talk with you, get some of your really awesome insights and your background and expertise mm-hmm. on how we can work on helping that, and then we'll also obviously start talking more about how you're going to be able to be used as a resource inside mm-hmm. of our office.
So excited.
Yeah, so cool. So if we could start just in the beginning, I know a lot of your background, but if you can talk to everyone and just what's your background in this? How mm-hmm. did you get into mental health therapy and coaching and really, I mean, I've talked to some of your clients and your reputation speaks for yourself that you get just amazing results with people, but where did it start from and what's your background in doing this?
Yes. So first off, love you, so happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Background, so for forever and ever, I had an interest in psychology. I remember, first off, I was just not a great student, did not enjoy school. My mind was everywhere else. Yeah. I'm sure that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no,
you know
like
my history.
Yes.
But in 7th grade, I took a class in psychology. It was the first class I'd ever taken that wasn't like math or science or history. And I just like lit up. I had no idea that there was actually something that you could study that would teach you about the brain and how people worked. And so, you know, tracking it all the way back to like, you know, middle school, that was where it really started for me. And I had no idea what I wanted to do when I got to college, but I always knew that I wanted it to be something related to like the mind and the human experience and, you know, our behaviors. Yeah. So I went down the route of like studying psychology, did that. Eventually, fast forward, I ended up going into clinical mental health counseling. That's a big fast forward. That's a big fast forward into graduate school, but I'll just get you there because that's the big pieces. And I just found like this was like where my heart was. I wanted to, you know, be there for people, create a space where, you know, people could come and process their thoughts and heal and grow and learn and all of those things. And I wanted to be really good at it. And so I learned a lot of things, obviously went through the schooling, got a master's in it, got my license in mental health counseling, worked in a nonprofit for a while, which was really, really great to be in a community with just a lot of different people and be able to serve in that way.
Different backgrounds.
So many different backgrounds.
Very diverse, yes.
Absolutely. And I did that for a while, transferred to my own private practice, which was great. And eventually just discovered I wanted to be a little bit outside of the medical umbrella. That's when I started coaching, became a certified life coach, and that's what I do now.
So cool. So a lot of questions even within that to start. I guess the big one, just because you said it last, what was your rationale for wanting to like maybe leave more of like the major medical umbrella that you spoke about?
Yeah.
Because we're in the same way, like we practice in a way that like, what I always say is like, I'm going to do what's best for my patients.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of times status quo in the current medical paradigm is not what's best for the patient.
Yeah.
So is that a rationale or is there something different with it?
No, for sure. That was a big piece of it. There were a lot of limitations and also a lot of like stipulations in counseling. So needing to be able to code things a certain way, limitations on how much you can see people for how long, the way you have to bill, and really boxing people in too with diagnosis, like that can stick with them for life. When
so someone comes in with a problem and you have to essentially label them.
Absolutely, before you can do anything.
Okay. And kids too?
Kids too. Oh yeah, and kids in a kind of in a bigger way, like to be able to work with them. There's even like kind of more hoops that you have to jump through in that way. So yeah, like there was that, and there were a couple of other things that just kind of along the way, I just felt like I would like to do this my way. and in a way that just felt like intuitively good, spiritually good, morally value-wise, like all of that. So I stepped away and have just kind of built up things on my own from there.
Well, I love what you've done, and so maybe that's some of the things that I think we should start talking about. I get to work with patients all day, and you do the same thing. I have maybe my beliefs on where I think people kind of go astray, but I'd love to hear it from you, from your background. Where do you think people are kind of, not saying they're wrong right now, but where do you think the problems, the major overarching issues in a lot of people's lives are right now when it comes to, getting their head on right and being able to really act out what a lot of people want, which is being healthy, being mentally sound, being able to be, a provider if you're a mom or a father for a family. Like, where do you think we're going wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of ways I could answer that, but the first thing that comes to mind is where people are most inclined to go to first when they figure out that there's a problem. So they're like, there's a problem in my life, I need to fix it. And so we just jump right into action, which seems like a great thing to do.
Yeah, so like the get-or-doners are like,
Let's
hey,
go.
I'm gonna stop smoking tomorrow. I'm gonna not talk about that thing anymore, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like stop or start whatever the thing is that they're trying to fix or improve or change, which again sounds like the way to go. And that's how I was taught to practice as well, as like a counselor. So when I was in graduate school, like you hear the problem, you see what the problem is, you tell people what to do to change their problem. And I did that for a long time. I counseled that way, even started coaching that way, until I learned that the way that we work as humans isn't just like there's a problem in our life and we fix it. It's like there is a sequence that happens that creates the actions that we take. And in order to ever change those actions, we have to look higher up to what essentially created the actions, or what we need to be doing first to create a new action.
Yeah, the thing that probably no one wants to talk about.
The thing that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah, because that's the underlying core of maybe like our behavior is like the thought processes we have that lead us to the decisions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, just being in action feels good too. People are like, I'm getting things done, I'm making changes, but if we don't talk about, which I alluded to a moment ago, if we don't talk about what's happening before the action, we'll continue to land back in the old actions that we've always done because of what sets us up there. So the elephant in the room is like what sets us up there, and obviously you've spoken to it. It's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, and a lot of times it's our unconscious thoughts or our subconscious thoughts that we're just not even aware of or recognizing are actually happening in our brains.
Okay.
And so for every single thought that we have, and we were talking about this before we hit play here, but we have anywhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. People like me and you probably have 100,000 thoughts because we're just going and we're going.
I want to escape my own mind sometimes.
I know.
I love it, but
there's a lot.
Yeah.
And so for every single thought that you have a feeling that's attached to it. So when you think I'm having fun right now, like you're going to feel joyful, or you're going to feel joyous or excited or whatever. There's always one feeling per thought. So for as many thoughts as you have that many feelings as well. That feeling is what generates your action. So if you have a thought that's like, this is really hard, you're not going to create a feeling that's excited or motivated or like, feeling empowered. You're going to have a feeling that tracks with this is really hard. And then the action that comes from that is absolutely tethered. So you can't have a thought that is like negative or kind of just putting you in this place where you're not going to be productive or feel motivated and then try to do something that is productive or disciplined or anything like that. It won't work.
Yeah. So my question on this is so the way that I've thought about this, I want to know if I'm right on this or wrong on this. I think that, people's thought process, what you're saying is like it leads them to a certain decision or a certain feeling, right? So let's say that someone, has an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
They, they binge eat, they love the unhealthy stuff. I'll have patients say, listen, I'm a Coke drinker, I've drank Coke all my life, it's just what I do, it just makes me feel good, right? And it's like, we all know that if you overconsume sugar, it's going to lead you to a road that you don't want to. Pre-diabetes, diabetes, weight gain. I jokingly tell my kids like, hey, I don't want you losing a foot, so let's not go down this road. But would it be great to say that like almost like we develop these pathways in our brain that lead us to this end, almost like elephants like carve, you know, these paths in trees. And sometimes people get stuck in a trench where like their thought always leads to an action, and until they're aware of that, they're never going to escape that.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's so good that you brought that up, because the biggest thing that holds people back is they do not recognize that their thoughts are like a conscious choice. When you think something when you think it over and over and over again, and I don't think that I said this yet, because I said it earlier, but out of the 60 to 80 to 100,000 thoughts that we have a day, 95% of them are repeated thoughts. So we only have like this margin, most people 5%, where it's like a thought that you've never thought. Yeah. So you're thinking things that you thought the day before, years and years and years before. Most of us for decades, the same programming is going. So if you have a thought that like came up in your mind when you were like, I don't know, 12 years old, that I love Diet Coke, and you've just thought it over and over, this is a belief now, and it is ingrained, and it doesn't feel like an option. It is a truth for you. And so until we get to this point where we recognize that this is not a truth, it's a thought that I've thought for so long that now it just is true, we don't have any room to compromise with it or to change it or to even see that there's another option.
Yeah, you're in this box.
You're just, this is it. This is what I'm a Coke drinker.
Yeah. And so I think this is where people get into problems too. And maybe even sometimes you've been in this situation before, let's say in your younger years, and even maybe now sometimes I do this, where you're in your own reality for such a long time that it's your truth, but it's not the truth. So like, a person can come in and sit with you for 5 minutes and go, I was really resistant to coming here. I really thought I had it all figured out. And you said this one thing in 2 minutes that just completely blew up my proverbial box of my current mental capacity for thought. And a lot of times we can't take ourselves out of this box. No. So where you can come in is I sit with patients all day. We're working on nutrition, we're working on getting their spine aligned properly, helping them on the road to wellness. And a huge part of it is the mindset piece. But it's the same struggle that I'll have sometimes, is like we'll start coaching them through things and they're reverting back. And it's like, I know that they need the help, it's just we don't have the time in there to get deep into the psyche and unpack the, hey, why did you start having that thought? Yes. Where did that thought lead you? And coaching them out of that rut that they can't escape through the walls of, to get, out of it, right? I think that's a really, really awesome thing. Okay, so first problem we talked about, people are kind of stuck in their current ways of thinking, their current paradigms of thought. And what you're saying you see is like where we jump to action step first. We want to take 8 steps in the right direction, but we don't have a roadmap. So as soon as we get there, we get lost, and then we revert invariably back to where we started. Yeah.
Or just to clarify that point, we want to take the action, but we want to keep the old thought.
Okay.
So we want to take the action, like I'm going to change my diet, but we want to keep the thought of like, oh, I've always been this way, or this is really hard, or this isn't my life, this isn't who I've ever been. And we have those thoughts replaying in here, like, I'm not a person who's fit. I'm not a healthy person. My whole family's been this way. And those thoughts are still there, and they're usually not like named. They don't realize they're there, but they're trying to take new action. And then that's where the disconnect is, because then you have to use willpower to do the action.
Yeah, and
it only lasts for so long, So
yes. For sure. No, I love that. That's great. Any other like that was one big thing, and that could be 10 issues in one. Are there any other like major problems that you're seeing as like a consistent maybe issue that people deal with very commonly within it? Within like the idea of like making change, following through with what people really truly want for themselves. Stinking thinking, getting second thought patterns is a big one. Anything else with that? Just curious.
Yeah, I think that it's not having the right like container to be able to process like what's happening in your brain. So I always say that there's 3 major ways that you can try and figure out what's happening up here. The first one is where most people land and get really stuck, which is like they just think about their things all day long. and they're thinking and they're spiraling and it's just rolling around in there, and nothing, very, very rarely does anything new or productive come from that. That's why people just feel stressed and overwhelmed all day, because they're in here and it's just rolling and it's rolling.
Yeah, and it's just heating up the air around them, but it's not really accomplishing anything and moving forward.
But it feels so productive. That's why people worry, because it's like, I'm doing something. See me thinking, see me worrying, see me overwhelming. So that's mostly where people land. They just think and they think and they think. The other option to kind of process things out is talking. And so that can be really helpful depending on who you're talking to, the questions that they're asking, the space that they're holding. They might ask really good questions that help challenge a way of thinking that you've always had, give you a different perspective. But even with that, as you're talking and as you're processing, like, our brains are still just going so quick. So like, you're noticing how they're looking at you. You know, is this okay? You know, am I talking about this too long? Is this wrong? Should I like, you know, tailor this? Should I change it? So talking is really good and it helps us get things out and understand it. But there's still some limitations that kind of hold us back and maybe don't allow us to see things fully, even in that.
Okay.
Writing things out, especially when we have the space and we're challenged to write and then write, allows us to see things that we've probably never seen before, for a lot of reasons. When I ask you a question, you're going to give me the first response, the automatic response, the thing that you've probably thought for years and years and years. It's that 95%.
Yes.
If I were to ask you that same question and write it down, you would write it, and then I would say, write on that question for another 3 minutes, and a whole bunch of other new things are going to come up that you've probably never thought about. Because you didn't have the space and you didn't encourage your brain to think deeper or to go underneath of that first answer. You might even have an inclination what the second answer would be, but when I ask you to go for the third and the fourth and the fifth, that's where deep beliefs and things that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. That's when that comes up.
Yeah.
So writing is something that I have found for my people. I love talk therapy. I love coaching. I think there's a place for it. It's really important. But when we bring people to the paper, it helps us see things new, and also it does this magical thing where we actually get a break from our thoughts. We take them out of here, we put them on here, we get to look at them.
They're concrete now.
Yeah.
There's no getting away from them. Yeah.
This, you see it, you can investigate it, you can change it, you can be curious about it, and that's how we get people to actually change the things that are happening in the thought line, so they can change how they feel, so that they can take the action that they want to take. We change them as like a whole system.
That's really cool. So in this is a perfect segue to talking about, you know, the way that you think is best to start catalyzing change. So talked about talking versus writing, and because like you're talking to me right now, and my brain is thinking 18 different things.
Right.
What am I going to say next? What question am I going to ask? How am I going to respond? Am I smiling enough? Right? All of those stupid things, right? But then when you started talking and focusing here on the writing thing, my brain can go to, oh wow, yes, and I can think back in times when like I've had to write it out, where like you'll put something on paper and you'll look at it and you'll be like, how was that my thought for the last 10 years?
Right.
And making change like this can be frustrating, because one of the things when you write it down is you can't escape the thought, and you know, we also don't want to feel I don't know what the word is for it, but like guilty for like our past indiscretions.
Right.
And we want to seem like we were always making the right decision. And sometimes it's hard for us to like openly admit that like maybe we thought about this wrong or that. When you write it out, then you can't talk back to yourself. Like it's there and you can deal with it. So with you, so the cat out of the bag thing here is you're going to be coming into our office to be helping us and our patients go through this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm going to probably be in the front row of this, and my wife as well, and our team as well, because they know about it as well. But you talked about setting up some of like a writing thing to help people. Can you unpack that a little bit more and kind of go through what it looks like and the why behind it?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. So this is something that I started doing in my own like personal practice about 6 months ago from this point right now where we are. And again, it came to me because journaling has been something that I come back to personally. I started a journal practice probably 12 years ago, and it's always been my anchor. It's always there to show me what I need to see, to ground me, to support me, to help me access my own answers and inner wisdom. I love having a coach, and I have a coach. I've been to counselors. I love having them to hold the space and to ask me new questions, but they don't have the answers to my life. only I do. I know my lived experiences. I know what my life looks like right now. I know what my barriers are. I know what my excuses are. So when I can see them, then I can come up with my own unique solutions. So I've recognized that personally, and I've also seen like professionally that I always have this in my like my tool bag, if you will, to bring clients to. Like, let's write this out. Let's see what comes up. And it's always deeper and way more complex than what they say to me when I'm talking to them and we're in like a conversation. So the idea of the journal club, which is what I do personally, it was born. I've been running it for months now, and it's been so helpful for me, for people who come into it. So what I'll be doing with your community, which I'm so excited about, is curating very specific questions for the topic of that month. So maybe it's self-confidence, maybe it's self-love, maybe it's habits, maybe it's something within your relationships, maybe it's old stories that you've had about yourself or just lived experiences that you've had that you want to look at differently, you want to heal from, you want to grow from, you want to challenge. There'll be a very specific topic, and then there'll be very specific questions, and we'll come together as a beautiful group and beautiful community, and we'll all write. We'll have about 20 minutes to write individually. We'll write, we'll process, we'll see the things, and then we'll bring that amazing community supportive component in where we'll share. And I'll be there holding the space to question and to kind of reflect and to take what you're saying and maybe help it make sense differently for you, for other people. And one of the most beautiful parts about that is like, because we're in the community setting, you're going to hear from other people, and that's going to make you feel connected, which we all need as humans, but also you're going to hear things that maybe you hadn't thought of, or maybe were blocked for you, or it wasn't accessible. Someone says something and your brain will go to work to make it make sense to you, even if it's a completely different situation or experience. Like, your brain will go to work to connect to it, and then it'll show you something like, do this. I didn't know this, so it's so cool. And
I love that.
And to do it in person is going to be like, oh,
yeah, it's great because we all need this encouragement. And oftentimes, for my patients specifically, like we're doing all action steps with them, right? And there's some mindset work we do workshops, but this is like something that's totally focused on what's between your two ears. How is your mindset shaping your actions? And I agree. I think when people start getting to do this, they're going to start uncovering some really deep truths about themselves. And you said this, I'm sure, somewhere in there, but the thing with writing too is like, my wife and I have done counseling for 17, 18 years. Even when we were dating, we went to marriage counseling. They're like, you're not here yet. And we were with a bunch of couples that were already married. So we're like, well, we're just trying to do this because we want to try to stay ahead of it, right? But so I've been in these deep sessions where my mind, I get so much out of it. And then I guess the problem is I leave and then I try to hark back to it. And I'm like, all I remember is the feeling I had in my body, how much revelation I might have had. And then I've literally before texted a counselor and be like, were you recording that by chance? They're like, no, I didn't record. I'm like, I wish someone recorded it. But when you have it in writing here, you can look back on this and, I think that you forget a large percentage of what you visually are exposed to once or twice, or you speak for the day. But when it's there and you can look back on it, it's got a better chance of really getting, I think, like deep into your psyche, so you can actually help manifest that change better.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you just brought that up, because I would have forgotten that point, which is one of the biggest benefits of journaling, and having that medium to do it on, because looking back through journals that I have that are 12 years old, and then even looking back in the journals that I've been writing in for the last year, there are answers in there are resources in there's like things to be proud of, there are things that I can grow from. There's so much in there. But like, to your point, when you leave a counselor's office or when you leave just a really good interaction, you're like, you and me are the same in a lot of ways. Like, I remember the feeling, but I have no idea like what the heck, what caused that. But I can be like, oh, okay, so question 2, we were talking about this, and then I thought about this. And then you have it, you take it with you every single time. You have your own little personal instruction manual, if you will, roadmap. I like that word that you used earlier, where it's like, this can show you, like, and the cool thing about the way that these workshops are going to be structured is these questions aren't just going to be a random, they're going to be positioned in a way that leads you somewhere. So that by the time we get done, there's going to be a part where you're like, okay, now what? And that's when the action can come in. And we all want to be in the action line, but we've done the work ahead of time to figure out like what we need to be thinking and why that's important, or what we maybe need to be challenging, so that now we can do this thing.
Yes. And now that the mindset is better, like we've got great action steps, like as far as going through protocols and resources, and you've been in the health field for a long time, like really there's a lot of basic things that need to be done, but some people cannot get the right mindset to even take those first steps. So now that they both mutually help each other.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's such a great thing. So it's going to be Saturdays, right? It'll be once a month.
Yes, so third Saturday of the month. It'll be about an hour long. So like I said, we'll come in, we'll connect, we'll love on each other, we'll write for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll share, and I'll do some coaching, and we'll do that for about 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll wrap up, and
so cool.
And we'll come back together again.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing too, to have that continuity as well.
Yes.
So that like it's the first time people are always scared, they're nervous, they don't know what to expect. And then once you start settling into it, I think it's going to be extremely impactful.
Yeah, and I hope that it's something that, I know for me, I do the journal calls in my group weekly. And you get into a group and you start to know these people, and you start to look forward to seeing them. And even in those moments where you're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to do this today, like you think about them, like, well, they're going to be there, and they're probably expecting me to be there. And then you come and you just like, you build that little community. So that's what I truly hope for this as well, is that people come in and this is going to be so beneficial for them mindset wise, and then also what it allows them to do with everything that you guys give them in your office. But I want this to be something where they can have another little family and support and community and connection on that.
For sure. I think the more that you can foster these natural comings together, because again, we're all in the same ride together. We most of us want the same things out of life. When I talk to people and say, at the end of the day, what do you see for your life? And most people have these grand visions of being there for themselves, being there for their grandkids, being full of joy and able just to express their best selves. So we're more alike than we think, and when we get together in a room like this, it's gonna, I think, really show through.
Yes.
So, super cool. Anything additional we need to add on? Anything?
No, I don't know. I feel like we got into some good stuff.
We got a lot of good stuff. So I'll sign off for now. What I'll do is say this, is that if you guys like the recording that's on here, this is in our podcast as well, so you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts at Be Aligned Health. The video is playing on YouTube. You can access our YouTube library at the same handle, or our social media at Be Aligned Health. Leslie, so thankful for having you on here, honestly. So and we'll see you in a few weeks and get this thing rocking and rolling.
Let's go.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks.